Okay, we're live. We are going to do another game today, and that is going to be Dear Esther. I'm not sure what I should say about this game, apart from it. Yes, it's published by the Chinese Room. Robert Briscoe put out, there you go, a tweet years ago, hoping to get the game ported to Linux, and that was as well as Humble also trying to get it. So I did some QA testing on the Wine release, which never actually got released, and a native source port that sort of got released. And as far as I'm aware, they were trying to port that to PS4, and then they just found that licensing and other stuff just was a butt. And from talking to other people who worked on Source games, they weren't happy trying to bring anything to non-Steam, basically. So it then got recoded in Unity. So that means now I've played the native version that I actually ran under Wine on... Is that Mac, I guess? Must have been. But I've played like 5 different versions of this game.
I sometimes feel as if...
We need the subtitles on. Closed captions. Well, that's suspicious. And changing it massively stalls the game? Wow. Can it go up from 4? I'm not pressing anything at the moment, I'm just waiting for it to be done. There we go. Oh, no, it's still doing stuff. I knew the game started with narration, I just assumed subtitles was on. So I'll be able to partially talk over it. So I'll try and talk less, at least.
Dear Esther, I sometimes feel as if I've given birth to this island. Somewhere between the longitude and latitude, a split opened up, and it beached remotely here. No matter how hard I correlate, it remains a singularity, an alpha point in my life that refuses all hypothesis. I return each time leaving fresh markers that I hope, in the full glare of my hopelessness, will have blossomed into fresh insight in the interim.
Well, it's definitely more visually impressive than the last time I played this. I think this was one of the earliest games that made people discuss walking simulators and just, you know, are they real games? Okay, so we have a chemical formula. We have a zoom mechanic. That's also the same button. Okay, all the buttons are focus. Let's just... I kind of hoped there'd be subtitles, because none came up from the first bit. Oh well. So yeah, there's not much to do in this game, apart from just to experience it. European Film Youth Convention 1978? Looks like that, yeah. So it's been a while. We have a bathroom. More pretty painting. There's an awful lot of paint cans for an island. Like, why? Now, again, I'm not looking for an exhaustive play. I'm just going to enjoy the game for a little bit. Now, I remember my friend Joseph mentioning this, and that's why I played it initially. And later on, he mentioned... okay, we can't go that way. He mentioned everyone's gone to the Rapture. And that's a game that then got a timed exclusive window with PlayStation, which is obviously the platform I mostly play on. Okay, there's no run button, which is a shame. Literally everything zoom in. I think that really bothered him, because he'd been waiting for it so long on Windows, and of course it then arrived there at launch, day and date, which I think took everyone by surprise. But that game is absolutely lovely, and I think it's such a shame that because of the engine it was made in, it's probably going to get the least amount of new platform updates compared to all the other titles that... Actually, I guess Chinese Room have had a real... They've had bad luck. Amnesia Machine for Pigs was a custom engine from the Amnesia people, I'm pretty certain. Then this has obviously been Source and Unity. And the other game... What was that actually in? Crytek, CryEngine, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we have another walkway here. And I know those...
There was once talk of a wind farm out here, away from the rage and the intolerance of the masses. The sea, they said, is too rough for the turbines to stand. They clearly never came here to experience the becalming for themselves. Personally, I would have supported it. Turbines would be a fitting contemporary refuge for a hermit. The revolution and the permanence.
It's always the music. It's the best part of the games they make. Always so somber and moving.
A wonderful sight. The moon cresting the junction between the cliff path and the stone circle. It cast a shadow of the ridge across the beach, all the world as if you had signed your name in untidy handwriting.
When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boats, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff path died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this: to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh. We are not like Lot's wife, you and I. We feel no particular need to turn back. There's nothing to be seen if we did. No tired old man parting the cliffs with his arms. No gifts or Bibles laid out on the sand for the taking. No tides turning or the shrieking gulls overhead. The bones of the hermit are no longer laid out for the taking. I have stolen them away to the guts of this island, where the passages all run to black, and where we can light each other's faces by their strange luminescence.
It's hard to know when our player character is going to speak again, so...
Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life. I find myself increasingly unable to find that point where the hermit ends and Paul and I begin. We are woven into a sodden blanket, stuffed into the bottom of a boat to stop the leak and hold back the ocean. My neck aches from staring up at the aerial. It mirrors the dull throb in my gut where I am sure I've begun to form another stone. In my dreams, it forms into a perfect representation of Lot's wife, head over her shoulder, staring along the motorway at the approaching traffic in a vacuum of fatalistic calm.
Such a little thing, but so beautiful.
I've become convinced I am not alone here, even though I'm equally sure it is simply a delusion brought upon by circumstance. I do not, for instance, remember where I found the candles, or why I took it upon myself to light such a strange pathway. Perhaps it is only for those who are bound to follow.
Showing the right candles out here still. Let's look over here, see if there's a drop. Yep, definitely a drop. I don't think it's time for me to jump, sorry. Wind noise always makes me shiver. I mean, most, actually, rain and snow in games can make my hair stand up, so no wonder ASMR is quite effective on me. Just, the audio side of it triggers me pretty easily. I don't remember such a defined gorge in this end of the island, but but I did play it back when it was still beautiful, but still so simple.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my Ordnance Survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the welcome brake services, but although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore.
Now, should we go towards the buoy or check out the boat?
I've begun to wonder if Donnelly's voyage here was as prosaic as it was presented. How disappointed not to have found the bones of the holy man. No wonder he hated the inhabitants so. To him they must have seemed like barnacles mindlessly clinging to a mercy seat. Why cling so hard to the rock? Because it is the only thing that stops us from sliding into the ocean. Into oblivion.
Olivia seems to want to make an appearance. I really should probably adjust the notification settings if I'm doing raw stream capture, because it gets around Sony's privacy settings. Some nice chains.
I had kidney stones and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk.
Rendered opaque. It's an interesting way to say it. Now, the boat has got the word drunk on it. I wonder if that's a manifestation of other things.
There must be a hole in the bottom of the boat. How else could new hermits have arrived?
That's probably the first active thought this character has had. Never did something. What's this? I mean, just a stone with a barnacle? Well, let's ascend this cliff. thing is, you can still see that foliage is far away from what it needs to be actually be dense. I'm not even certain that the PS5 would be able to put every single individual grass needed to make that look like grass. But I generally think that's probably something that needs to be worked on for this generation. Just making the ground look less like one texture of painted on grass and another texture of stood up grass. So that was like that goes down to a cave where the water that's come in from the sea has made it drop out.
I've begun my ascent on the green slope of the western side. I've looked deep into the mountain from the shaft and understood that I must go up and then find the way under. I will stash the last vestiges of my civilization in the stone walls and work deeper from there. I'm drawn by the aerial and the cliff edge. There is some form of rebirth waiting for me there.
I don't even remember surgical equipment being possible. So these are meant to be sort of sheep pens or for vegetables, but the walls are a bit too low. It's unlikely that you'd get material build-up of anything, just because where would it come from? There's not enough dirt around it. There's bedrock showing all over the place. So.
The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called Jakobsen, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either.
Pretty depressing. Good work, though, building a house like this on a remote island.
My heart is landfill. These false dawns waking into the still never light. I sweat for you in the small hours and wrap my blankets into a mass. I have always heard the waves break on these lost shores, always the gulls forgotten. I can lift this bottle to my ear, and all there ever is for me is this Hebridean music.
Hebridean music, that's good description. Great view from up here. So we're going over there, into that cave with something that's twinkling. They'll notice, okay. We have more of this. I wonder if you could find an island and fashion an experience like The Witness or Dear Esther onto it. Thing is, any island that would be tolerable enough for habitation probably has people on it, and ones that aren't probably would not.
In a footnote, the editor comments that at this point Donnelly was going insane as syphilis tore through his system like a drunk driver. He's not to be trusted. Many of his claims are unsubstantiated, and although he does paint a colourful picture, much of what he says may have been derived directly from his fever. But I've been here, and I know, as Donnelly did, that this place is always half imagined. Even the rocks and caves will shimmer and blur with the right eyes. They found Jakobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. He'd struggled halfway down the cliff path, perhaps looking for some lost goat, or perhaps in a delirium, and expired, curled into a claw right under the winter moon. Even the animals shunned his corpse. The mainlanders thought to bring it home unlucky. Donnelly claims they dragged it to the caves to thaw out and rot, but he is proving an unreliable witness.
Can we go in here? Is that no?
Come back.
Okay, I'm more surprised that we went in 2 seconds and then it teleported us back, and then I thought, well, should I push in? So then I pushed into the water as we went under, which is why we had a longer duration. I guess life flashing before our eyes sequence. And then I started pulling backwards, and I guess it wasn't enough, but I genuinely didn't know what would happen. It's interesting that it did that, considering the rest of the story. But I won't spoil it. Actually, considering our time, I'll give it a couple of minutes and then probably into the end of this cave. The next loading screen. This is a big vessel that's rotted out. It's massive, look at it. Thought I heard a voice on the wind.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
Okay, so there's medical supplies in the barn. Was us patching up our leg, was it? Well, I was going to say. Ominous. Very steep hole. Jacobson.
Did Jakobsen crawl this far? Can I identify the scratches his nails ruined into the rocks? Am I following him cell for cell, inch for inch? Why did he turn back on himself and not carry through to the ascent?
Right, well, I guess that's the best place to leave Little Luck. In some mystery. See, candles are still burning. If you want to find out the mysteries of why you're in this cave, why everything's blue, why there are candles, check out Dear Esther. It's quite a fun game. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check out the next one.